Hello everyone! So we're going to take a look at LawBreakers today, the LawBreakers Alpha specifically. Something that I've been meaning to take a look at for a bit, but have been inconveniently missing the Alpha time slots each and every single time that they've been available because scheduling. And, well, this is the last chance that I've got to actually make a video. So, yeah, I decided that I needed to hurry up and do it. And because of that, I've had about 30 minutes of practice before making this video, so do not expect good gameplay in the background. I tried, but I'm playing against people that have very clearly played the previous alphas and are much better than me. And like I said, I've had about half an hour of practice tops before making this, so, you know, it's not good. I tried. But, hey, it's been a bit since I've played some really competitive FPS, and, well, this is that. So, the other two big alphas that I've actually been invited to, I missed the times for. They were a little more restrictive in terms of the time slots, and I screwed that up, so sorry for not getting the coverage out earlier. But, as I mentioned, this is the last alpha that is available, so this is it. So here I am. So what is LawBreakers? Well, LawBreakers is the game by Bosskey that is being developed, and Bosskey is the studio made by some former Epic Games employees as well as Cliffy B himself, Cliff Bleszinski. For those of you who don't know who Epic or Cliffy B actually are, you will know their games. He was involved in, of course, creating Unreal Tournament, an incredible arena shooter for the PC, and they have also been the creators of the Gears of War series. And, well, he decided to sort of leave Epic and create his own studio after Gears of War, and this is what they're making. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Gears myself, but I do love me some Unreal Tournament. And LawBreakers is looking to be another one of those kind of hybrid shooters that are kind of entering the market, and it does some really interesting things. So the background gameplay you're seeing right now will include both currently available game modes that they're showing off, as well as all 4 of the available classes. So if you want, you can just skip through and ignore me, and just see all 4 classes. But what the game actually is sort of a combination arena shooter and hero shooter, as the genre is being called. Hero shooter involves things like Overwatch, which are shooters that involve actual, shooting mechanics, like guns and first person of shooting them, and abilities, cooldown-based abilities that your characters have, other than the equipment they're, well, equipped with. Things almost resembling action RPG or MOBA mechanics, although not exactly like those necessarily. And it's definitely not Overwatch. I'd like to get that comparison out of the way right now. This is not an Overwatch clone. It is certainly reminiscent of games like that, but it is definitely its own style. And it has a lot more arena shooter in its DNA. I would say a game like Overwatch is sort of a little bit arena shooter, but it's mostly this sort of hero shooter genre plus a team-based, objective-based FPS, like Team Fortress 2, like Enemy Territory Quake Wars, or Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, or Dirty Bomb, or Brink, or, well, I mean, anything that Splash Damage has ever made. Things like that, combined with the hero shooter idea, whereas LawBreakers is very much a little bit, like 25% this hero shooter idea, mixed with about 75% the arena shooter idea of things like Unreal Tournament, Quake, things like that. Very much more Unreal Tournament, though, in my opinion. There's a lot of UT in here. The DNA is very arena shooter feeling, and I like that. So the 2 game modes that are available to show off right now is the one I'm playing right now, which is a capture point game mode that has a bit of a spin on it, in that once you capture a point in that particular round of 3 points, they cannot be retaken until all of the points are captured. So you can't, like, go back and forth and try and capture the points multiple times. Once one side takes one, that's it. Otherwise, it works like you would think. You stand in the area of the capture zone in order to capture it for your team. If another team member from the opposite side is in it, then it is contested, and you have to push them out of the zone or kill them or otherwise remove them from the capture zone in order to actually capture it, and that was pretty sweet. And That's really all there is to it. It's simple, but a good mode to have in a game like this. I feel it's, you know, it's an arena shooter staple, really, a capture point based game mode. And in this case, it works quite well. Now, what you're seeing here is something interesting and quite unique to this game. Is in the middle of most of the maps, and there are 2 available in the alpha, there are these zero gravity areas, and you're noticing that in these areas you can float around all over the place, and people are kind of jumping and floating everywhere, and that your guns actually propel you in directions, and explosions propel you all around, and things like that. And I died right there. And this is because in the middle, usually, of every map, there is just a big zero-G area. And the zero-gravity mechanics are pretty well realized. You can actually blind fire behind your character, you can shoot behind you, which is of course good to kill someone chasing you, but it's also really good because there are sort of Newtonian physics in these zero-gravity areas, which means if you shoot behind yourself, it actually propels you forward. So you can hold control and fire behind you and actually use that as kind of a thruster to boost yourself forward, which is really neat. And every character has different sort of movement-based abilities that they can use in order to traverse these areas at varying rates and things. And obviously, there's usually a central capture point in one of the zero-gravity areas on these maps. And in both of the current available maps, the middle of it is a giant zero-G area with a central capture point that is always a big contested war zone and pretty fun to be around. And I really sucked it up at the end of that match there, and we lost. But yeah, and this is the other game mode, which is called Overcharge, and it is actually pretty neat. It's kind of a combination of Capture the Flag and King of the Hill. And by that, it's you have to capture a thing and bring it back to your base, like CTF. However, it's also sort of like King of the Hill in that you have to actually set on that thing for a while in order to actually gain points. So, it's like capturing a flag. You must get it, hold on to it, and not be killed while you're carrying it back to your base, or else you'll drop it and someone else can pick it up and carry it back to their base. However, as long as it is in your base, it actually gains points, kind of like having captured a hill in King of the Hill. And if someone else captures the flag, in this case it's a battery, back, those points stay on it. So the way it works is you capture the battery from the middle of the map, usually it's in the zero-gravity area of one of the maps. You bring it back to your base, and it begins to charge as soon as you put it into your base. You have to, whether it's on the ground somewhere or in your base or wherever it is, you have to sit around the battery for a second because it has a shield around it. And you have to sit in the area of it to deplete this shield and be able to actually pick it up. So you can't just run into it immediately to pick it up. And then once that shield is depleted, you can run into it, capture it, and then move to wherever, and then pick it up and drop it off. And the charge that it accrues from being in someone's base actually stays on it for the entire match, as you can see. So it has 16% charge because it was in the enemy's base for long enough to gain that amount of charge. And even though one of my teammates stole it and dropped it, it still retains all of that charge. So technically, you could win by having the enemy keep it literally the entire match up to 100% charge, and then steal it at the last second, take it to your base, and win. That is possible. Basically let the enemy do all of the work on the hill and then capture it like a flag. It's an interesting kind of hybrid game mode, and that was a bad place to use the ulti there. I'll talk about the character classes in just a minute. I wanted to cover the modes first, just because that's kind of what you're seeing all the action based around. It's pretty fun. I like it. The balance in both of the modes is interesting because the character movement and weapon abilities all sort of differ in their usages depending on which mode you're playing. For instance, a lot of characters have something that can move an enemy out, especially in a zero-gravity area, of a radius. So, in something like this mode, that's good for keeping them away from your battery. Something like the Assassin, for instance, has a big sort of pulse grenade that can not do very much damage, about 50, I think, on a direct hit, but can really move someone away from you quite heavily. It sort of pushes them. But in the other mode, in the capture point mode, especially if you use it in the zero-gravity area, it can push them out completely of the capture point zone. And if you leave the capture point zone, even for a split second, the capture progress resets down to 0. So that means that in both modes, the actual character abilities and weaponry do take on a somewhat different usage and kind of balance idea, which is interesting, and I like that. That's a staple, really, of arena shooters, in that a lot of weapons and map points in various shooters and things like, for instance, UT2K4. Depending on what mode you were playing, different vehicles and weapons actually served very different purposes, and a vehicle or weapon or spawn point, like location or choke point, would be considered either useless or really great, depending on the mode you were playing, if it was like CTF or if it was Onslaught and things like that. And this has that. Like I said, it's very much an arena FPS in its DNA, even though it has some newer mechanics in it. So the character classes are the other big part. Right now you're seeing the really heavy character who has a missile launcher, or a rocket launcher, as you can see. And the abilities they have, that was awesome. They can, let's see, she can fire rockets and detonate them in midair with the secondary fire, although it's a little bit delayed, and the rockets actually have a fairly small splash radius, so you have to be careful with it, but it's very powerful if you manage to do it. Also has a neutron mine, which does some damage. You see me tossing it out there for some kind of area denial, but it also drags people in to its radius, which is of course very good for then hitting them with missiles, because you're concentrating them into a small area, so that's useful. Also has a secondary weapon, which is this lightning gun. Is a sort of short-range arcing lightning gun that fires a constant stream. I think it's called a crisper. And that's useful for attacking enemies that want to get really, really close to you, because of course you don't want to kill yourself with the missile launcher. And let's see, their other ability is that leaping slam right there. Very good for mobility, because she is of course the slowest character with the largest health pool, 500 HP. Although I'm managing to die constantly nonetheless. Sorry about the not so great gameplay, but I'm trying. Like I said, very little practice. And the slamming ability actually has a pretty hefty amount of damage, and also is of course good for moving in or out of the way of different abilities. And every character also has an ulti that takes a while to charge, and this character's ultimate basically turns them into Emperor Palpatine. And they go super unlimited power, float in the air, gain a big boost in their maximum health, and shoot lightning out of their fingertips, which is pretty sweet. Although it does make you an immediately obvious target for literally everyone on the map. But you do, like I said, gain bonus health, and your damage is quite heavy with those lightning arcs. Although they have and here it is actually, they have a limited range, so you gotta be careful with it. I think you also pulse out momentary bursts of lightning that do additional damage to anyone that gets close to you. So yeah. The other classes, the first one you saw was the sort of basic soldiery class, a useful class to kind of get used to the game with. Uses an assault rifle that has a pretty cool reload animation. It's basically just an assault rifle. It's pretty simple, but it's effective, long range, and accurate. Quick reload speed. Also uses a secondary, almost shotgun-esque lightning surge gun that you can actually use the secondary fire to alter the shot spread in either a vertical or a horizontal shot spread, which is pretty cool, depending on the kind of range and grouping of enemies that you're dealing with. And also has a shift sprint, which is actually a distortion field that allows him to double jump and also makes other friendlies near you run faster as well. So it's not just a sprint for you, it actually helps your teammates run faster too. And a sort of ability limiting grenade, sort of almost like an EMP style of grenade that makes your enemies' character abilities not work in the radius, so they can only use their primary and secondary weapons for a short period of time. The second character class you saw, the one with the minigun, is pretty fun. She has a sort of jetpack that works a little bit like Diva's and Overwatch Diva's movement. It's basically a jetpack. I mean, it works just like that. You jet forward, and it has a limited fuel supply. You can move all over the place. She's quite mobile with it, but has more health than the most mobile class, the Assassin class, which is what you're seeing right now, which I'll talk about last because she's my favorite. And she has a minigun, which chews through people but is highly inaccurate and has a fairly long reload time, but a good store of shells available for you. no secondary weapon, but she does have a sort of secondary fire. The minigun you saw allows you to actually fire a burst, a sort of pulse from your left hand. That is a short-range shotgun-like effect. That is pretty satisfying and can be used to propel yourself backwards in zero-G areas, as well as force an enemy away from you if it doesn't kill them quite heavily. She also has the so-called meteor shells, which is a sort of cluster frag grenade, which is pretty amazing, but takes some practice to aim, especially if throwing it from zero-G areas, because it doesn't arc like a grenade you would think of normally would actually travel. It kind of travels in a more straight line because, of course, zero gravity. And finally, she has her ulti, which is Starfall. She floats up in the air and then allows you to aim down somewhere at the ground. Well, she will then stomp down very hard and actually do like a tremendous amount of damage to anything in a small radius. And I think it actually can produce a small area of effect anti-gravity zone as well. And then this is the assassin class. She has these cool blades, very powerful, but melee range. She has this, which is a shotgun that fires an interesting spread. It's not like a normal shotgun spread, it's actually very geometric, and it can also be charged. She has a sort of pulse grenade that can block projectiles and shove people away. She has a dash and a grappling hook for moving around levels very quickly and are necessary because she's highly fragile. And she's very fun to use because of that. And her ulti is a frenzy that does a big Legend of Zelda Link style spin attack and marks everyone in a sort of thermal-esque vision and gives her some life leech on her melee attacks. So yeah, this is LawBreakers in the current state of the alpha. What does it need? Well, it obviously needs some balance work. I can't really comment too much on the balance, not having played enough of it yet. I mean, everyone thinks that everything they get killed by constantly is overpowered, so I'm not really going to comment on that. I don't really see anything that seems massively overpowered personally. I think there's a lot of counters and a lot of interesting plays to be made. I don't see anything that I think massively dominates the battlefield in a way that is way too difficult to actually defeat. But then again, I've only played for like an hour total, so I'm not going to comment on balance. I don't have the necessary skill or experience to do that. I would like to see, of course, more variety, more characters, but more so than more characters or classes, I would actually like to see weapon and maybe ability, but definitely weapon variants for the characters. For instance, I would like to be able to take a different weapon for a particular slot for any individual character. So, for instance, maybe instead of this shotgun, I could choose an SMG for her, or maybe for Bombshell, instead of the missile launcher, I could take a long-range, slow-firing railgun, or instead of the assault rifle for the soldier class, Kentaro, I could take like an auto shotty or something. A different set of primary and secondary weapons for each of the characters. I think that would be a good idea. That adds to the variety of the game without necessarily making it as difficult to balance as constantly adding entirely new characters, in which you could run into some serious problems with that. I mean, if you even add just one more set of weapons for each character, that basically doubles the variety in the game, which is a huge deal, and I think that would be a good idea. Also, of course, more maps and everything, but remember, this is an alpha, and this is not just a marketing alpha like Battlefield does for their betas. This is a real alpha. This game is quite far out and very unfinished, so what you're seeing, highly unfinished and only representative of a very small slice of a very unfinished product. So the feedback I would have is variety. Balance is, of course, to be talked about, but I can't really talk about that right now, so I'm focusing on content, and the content that I think would be best for the game, besides the obvious things like more maps and game modes, would be adding variants of equipment for characters to take. That means that there are more strategies available, that means that there are more things that can be done with each individual character, and also more strategies and things that you're going to have to face, which makes the game more fun for everyone, basically. So, I mean, this is really the end of the alpha period, and I'm excited for the, hopefully, beta period that they decide to release eventually, and hopefully, when Bosskey opens their chest next time for the beta period, or whatever they decide to do next for this game, that it is full of some new shinies, and I would like to bring you that as well, so definitely do expect more from LawBreakers when they decide to open it up again, but of course I can't really bring you anything else right now because, well, this is it. And the game is going offline in a few hours. So, thanks for watching. I hope you got some good info from this, and I hope you enjoyed the footage. And this is LawBreakers. Check it out. I'll link you in the description below to the website. Keep an eye on it. It is an interesting project, and I think the world could use some more arena shooters that have a good pedigree and a good, I guess, team behind them that knows how to make good arena shooters, that maybe have some more modern elements to them, and do something a little differently, because, you know, we've got some failed arena shooters on the market right now that really aren't doing so well, like Toxic and Warsaw and things like that. And I think that shows that people want arena FPS, but they want arena FPS with more mechanics than just what the classics had. And the whole emerging genre of the hero shooter shows those modern trappings can be applied to other games as well. So that's, I think, what we're going to be getting here, and LawBreakers is looking quite promising. So thanks again for watching, guys, and do check it out. I'll see you guys next time.